So, welcome to the Meaningful Jobs podcast season three. I'm your host, Adrian, and today we're extremely honored to welcome Federico Demarin from GroupM, who is, the Chief People Officer. So, how are you, Federico? Hope you're doing well.
Hi, Adrian. Yeah, I'm doing great, and thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you.
No problem. So, before talking about GroupM, I like to get to know you a little bit better, like your career, how do you find meaning of work, and obviously as a chief people officer, you oversee the entire recruitment or HR function in a company. So it's very important for people to understand, from a chief people officer's point of view, what's the meaning of work. So can you tell us, how you go into this position? Like, what's your career, and was
Mhm.
HR your first choice in your career?
Sure. And first clarification, I am the Chief People Officer for GroupM Latin America, which means
Yeah.
that I do report to the Global Chief People Officer for GroupM. Um, Basically, I am responsible for all the different people practices, as well as for the entire people service or HR service to about 2,700 people in across about 16 markets in Latin America, including some people in the US as well. How did it all started? By chance. Honestly,
By
I was
chance.
working in marketing um, um, many years ago, and I wanted to work for a company that would allow me to follow my dream back then, which was working with people from different countries, different cultures, and travel. That was my dream when I was 16. So as soon as I was out of high school and then went into university, that was what I wanted to do. After that experience in marketing, I came across Reuters, the news agency. Back then, it was just Reuters. Um, it was a fantastic company. It allowed me to get to know all the different elements of the people function, as well as working as a generalist with different countries, different market, sorry, two different companies in one, because there's the news agency part and then there's the financial market side on the other. So it was a very interesting culture. Um, Fast forward, I went through different roles in Latin America. I had a chance to work in Europe. I moved in terms of my realm from Latin America to the Americas, including Canada and the US. That was for Swarovski, a jewelry business, completely different,
Mhm.
it was
Yeah,
a
you seem like you're
private company.
jumping all around, I think.
Yeah. I mean, basically, the driver to that is just remaining as a learning, remaining as a student, remaining passionate about what I'm doing. 10 years with Reuters, who eventually became Thomson Reuters, then 10 years with Swarovski, who allowed me to move from Latam to the Americas. Then I worked in a global role as chief people officer for a duty free company. So I had the chance to work with Asia, with Europe. Um, and now I started in GroupM about a year and a half ago. I'm responsible for Latin America. The reason why I chose this role, it's because of the thriving industry that digital advertising is. It's very connected to technology, very connected to some of the things in innovation that I really wanted to tackle on as a people professional. Um, and the purpose, which is answering your question, right? Why jobs? Why working?
Yeah.
I had to discover through this journey what was it. At the beginning, as I said, I had a dream, but
Hmm.
that dream was not really about working. It was more about living, right? As I went through those experiences, I realized that there were some other things that I was doing that were not necessarily dreams. They weren't necessarily, happy things. Sometimes they were stressful. Sometimes they were difficult, but at the same time, those things made me feel alive, made me feel part of something bigger. um, Regardless of a promotion, you start growing in your life. You want to have your house, you want to have your car, you want to have a better car,
Yeah.
and then you have kids. And I think this is where, to me, the critical moment came up. When I had kids, I realized that the reason why I work cannot be just money. Um, because I dedicate too much time for it, and I don't have enough time for everything. That is reality, and I think none of us do, especially once you have kids. Um, so I realized that the only way this could work is if I find a purpose behind my job that is fulfilling, other than producing happy moments, right? Because when you
Mm.
travel, when you do, you get a raise, you get a promotion, those are happy moments. But then the rest of the time, it's not like that, right? You're doing things, and those things could motivate you or not. And that took a lot of time for me to figure out that some of those things have something in common, which is in my case, my purpose, which is creating this effect on other people that you can help them move forward in their careers, in their lives, producing those happy moments or achieving that purpose. And that's what wakes me up every morning to say, you can make a difference, even for one person at a time.
I think it's interesting that you said that you thought you had dreams when you were young. You thought,
Mm-hmm.
you wanted a house, you wanted money, you thought that would give you happiness, but after you had kids, that perhaps wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say you had regrets, that you didn't find out about this earlier?
No, I wouldn't say a regret. I don't think I would have gotten to the point I am today without going through those steps. There are some things, even if people tell you, if I can tell you when you're 10, 15, this is going to happen, this is what I think will happen, I might be wrong. Each
Mm.
life is different. And if I could travel back in time and tell myself, look, this is not important, probably my older self would say, yeah, yeah, right. And I'll continue on the same path, because some things you just need to live and experience. And sometimes achieve or fail to realize what's underneath. And if I look into my life and what I did around work, I think I've got where I am today with this clarity, if you want to call it, because I went through all those steps and I realized that, okay, it was satisfying. It was happy. There is happiness in those things, but you run out of those. And if you start collecting moments of happiness, that's probably a very tiny percentage of your time. The rest of your time, you're just doing things that you're not so sure if they're good, bad. They make you happy. What you can know is that they engaged you, that they make you thrive. They make you. They see. It seems like time passes faster when you're doing those things. When you can identify that, and the pattern behind those things is where you can find what really makes you thrive.
I think, yeah, you made a really good point about, that our so-called happy moments like promotions or, a pay rise, these don't last long. And there might be a lot of things that are relatively less enjoyable, but you've got to, try and find enjoyment in these things. So like in your situation, how did you try and turn these relatively less enjoyable moments into happiness or into work that you find meaning in?
I think one fundamental piece of that is asking yourself, reflect, what did I learn about this? What did I learn about this situation? Um, and am I better as a professional? Am I better as a person after going through this? Which is not the same as I am going through this, because when things are happy and great, you can always, you know, make that assumption, right? This is great. This has helped me. But when things are difficult, sometimes you question, as you go through them, like, I wouldn't like to be in this place, or if I could choose not to. But then those things can also be critical moments for development. So I think once you go through any moment that you think is relevant, good or bad, you should ask yourself, how did I go through this? Was that I engaged? Did I put myself, how was my energy? Uh, did I feel like time, passed fast, that I was so concentrated, so dedicated, um, or the other way around? I felt like I don't really understand, why am I doing this? Who's looking at this? Who's affected by this? Is it relevant? Is it irrelevant? So I think reflecting of what you've just done, good or bad, can help you understand if you're better after you come out of those things or not.
Would you say, self-reflection is something that you've done throughout your career, or is that something that you had to learn?
I had to learn, and so I can say I I didn't do much in my 20s.
I
I
think
was
that's
just focused on
understandable.
the steps, right? The steps. So
Yeah.
that step, and then it's the next step, and then it's the next
Yeah.
step. So you actually don't enjoy much, not even those happy moments. You don't get to enjoy them that much because you're so much focused on growth, development, the next
Yeah,
thing.
it's like ticking off a checkbox list, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, you can always go to people in their 20s to say, hey, enjoy the moment. But I would be somehow trying to do to make other people do something I couldn't do myself, right? I think when you're 20 and you have capabilities for reflecting, for understanding, as well as you have capabilities for achieving, and there's a balance, right? So I think when you're in your 20s, you need to achieve things for yourself. And it's fine that you don't reflect that much as long as you start progressing, right? Your mind should switch from achieving and energy to reflecting and wisdom, because you also have to start in that journey, start teaching others in little quantities, but you have to start teaching other people. You cannot teach other people if you don't grow in wisdom, not just in those steps that you're focusing on when you're 20.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you made because, wisdom is not something that people seek, from a young age. And even people growing older might not even value wisdom as that much of a thing. So, you know, I think I find it quite unique that you found wisdom to be quite important from a relatively young age. Can you like define what you think wisdom is and how it helps you in your career?
Sure. I think wisdom is about trying to find any learning from everything you go. And by that, you listen to other people, you incorporate their feedback, you go through things, and then you try to understand what those things meant for you, right? So most of the, when you're young, when you're a kid, and as an example, you just go through things. You don't reflect at all. So that's something that your brain starts develop naturally as you grow older, except that if you don't exercise it consciously, you will never achieve your potential in terms of wisdom because you're not focusing on it. For me, it was critical in my 20s, 24, I would say, that I started to make some trips by myself, something that I wasn't used to, that it took me out of my comfort zone. I love traveling, but I was always traveling with people, either, your partner or friends or your family, but
Would you
you're
say
always
you're more
traveling.
of an extrovert than introvert?
I don't know how to define myself, honestly. I think
You just like traveling with people, I guess.
I liked it, but then I realized that when you travel by yourself, you do have far more time to reflect, to live inside yourself, to appreciate things without talking about them. So your mindfulness and your level of awareness grows. So to me, that was a fantastic experience that I continue doing through my life, together with traveling with other people, because those are two different experiences. So I think mindfulness and it's very much in touch with wisdom. If you want to develop your wisdom, you need to really understand, what is this person trying to tell me and why? What's the learning behind? As you go through things, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What am I learning from this? And that is what it's going to grow your wisdom, because you're training your brain to become wisdom focused.
I think it's interesting that, from my observation, some people, in their 20s, they never seem to progress. But, some other people in their 20s, they seem to be able to have, maybe higher levels of thinking or critical
Mhm.
thinking. Are there any like factors that you can identify that, makes this kind of differentiation between people? Because, a lot of
Well,
people start from the same starting point, but they turn out to live different lives.
and there's so many variables that would affect your ability to have this mindfulness or wisdom at that age. Obviously, there's some things that are inherent into yourself as a human being, that are unique to yourself since you're born. Some other things you learn from your parents, from your school teachers, from your first bosses. So I believe that when there are some combinations of all those things, that some sometimes by chance, sometimes by intention, they point in one direction. It most likely, when those things combine, you will get someone that has a higher level of consciousness and mindfulness and wisdom at an early age, because they've been harvesting all those things since they were young. So as parents, you need to try to understand where your kids sit, if they're more inclined towards living in the moment, if they, on the other side, they are always thinking or rethinking, or if they're always thinking about the next step. How do you enrich their experiences, so when they become adults, they start practicing that more? It's not about driving a person towards a direction that person doesn't want to go. You just need to show them options, and make sure their brain develops holistically, not just in one area, right? You cannot be on the extremes. You cannot just focus on your inside and your inner world and mindfulness.
Yeah,
You
that
also
would
have to
mean you're
think strategically,
autistic.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, you need
yeah.
to look long term. If you want to find purpose at an early age, you also need to look forward, right? Not just in the moment. So it's a very difficult task, because you have so many things you want to do, so many things you want to achieve when you're young. Um, the best advice is start small, little
Start small.
steps of mindfulness, of meditating. At the end of the year, what happened? Was it a good year? Was it a bad year? Why? What would you like to do next that is not just another step? How are you growing as a person? What commitments you want to embark on next year? Those steps will wire your brain in the right direction.
So, rewinding back to the start of the interview when you said you got into marketing before, switching to HR.
Mhm.
Can you tell us how you got into marketing and, what made you make the switch?
Well, marketing is a very sexy function. I was studying business administration, so I was really open to many different things. I knew I liked the idea of the corporate world, the different functions interacting with each other, and one job agency I connected with offered me this possibility with Budweiser, and it was a very, very interesting industry. I was in my 19, 20 years old. I started very at the very bottom of the exercise, in doing marketing, and grew in 2.5 years to do a lot of things, like including some negotiations. So it was it was really just being interested in exploring it as an opportunity. And I can still feel the excitement around that function. That's why I also like this industry.
So, after being in marketing, first of all, how long were you in marketing before you made the switch?
I had a very short experience with American Express, and then in Budweiser, so about 3 years, 3 years and a half.
I see. So you actually made the switch quite early on. Like, was
Yeah,
there any
yeah,
reason why
absolutely.
you did that? Because you find marketing interesting, right? So why did
Yeah,
you make the switch?
yeah. No, I was in. Well, the direction that job was going was not traveling and working with people from other countries. It was more local. It was very intensive because I have to work on the weekends,
Oh,
um,
wow. Okay.
summers. Beer sells when people have fun, and so
How do
instead
you
of
even
having
find time to travel?
that was the thing. I couldn't, and so it was not really fulfilling what I wanted to do. So eventually, I said, "Look, this is great. Sounds fantastic, but it's not aligned to what I wanted to do." So that's why I changed. And HR came up as an opportunity because the agency that put me into that job, when I spoke to them, look, I'm just leaving. I cannot continue doing this. It's not aligned. She said, "There's another job, right? This is nothing. It has nothing to do with your previous job. But why don't you take a look? I think it will take you into this direction." And it was in HR. So I said, "Okay, let's see." I came across a great leader back then, someone that showed me what I could achieve, and it showed me that I could learn a lot from her, and that made me take the jump.
So did you have to start from the bottom, in HR?
Oh yeah, yeah.
How did you feel, having that 3.5 years experience and then sort of back to square one?
That was tough. That was tough. I can tell you that there were many days where I felt the things that I'm doing, I shouldn't be doing this anymore, right? But every time I felt like that, I realized, why did I join this company? Why am I in this job? And the opportunity that I was looking for, it was there. It was right in front of me. I just need to go through those steps to get it. And it was probably a year and a half after that, not much, probably less even, that I had the chance to start working with people from other countries, starting at the bottom, right? Some administrative tasks, working with payroll, some basic things that you do in HR, personnel files. But you start connecting with those individuals, and as you prove yourself on those starting points, you show that you have potential, and then you get more space for other kind of opportunities. So I was lucky, but I also took my chances. I think 2.5 years down the road, I was given the opportunity to take on far more tasks because the position of my boss was eliminated. And I was told, look, I don't know what your boss was doing. So I need you to step up, but we're not going to give you your boss job. So tell me
Did you
what
get
you
a
want to
pay
do.
rise at least?
Yeah, very, very little, nothing compared to what I was taking on. So I went home and I said, okay, decision time. You're going to have to work much harder, more time, more pressure, and the money's not coming now. What are you going to do? And I said, let's go for it. I know what I want, and let's prove myself that I'm worthy of that other title, of that other salary. And that's what I did. But those are, those moments where you can go left or right and it can change your life. I think that was one of my moments where I said, I'm just going to go this way because I think it can take me to my big goal, versus the other that would put me back into square zero, because that meant, okay, I'm just want to be here. I don't want to take that risk
Yeah.
or that chance.
So how difficult was it to progress, from a junior or mid-level managerial role to, chief people officer of such a large company? And is there a reason why you wanted to progress into a C-suite level? Because being a C-suite person isn't the right thing for everybody.
No, of course not. And I think so. It took me 20 years approximately to get to that C level. I never focused on levels, but I did focus on something important, which is how much do I own what I do versus just implement what other people are trying to do. And as you go through companies and roles, you learn that, they're very structured companies where you just need to execute. There's very little space for your own footprint. And as you start growing into bigger leadership roles, you get more space, which is also a risk and a responsibility. So you need to be ready to understand and to take that, understanding that it means different tasks. Leading people, it's about listening to people, it's about doing things for them, administrative tasks as much as motivating, holding them when they need to, facilitating things for them. And it's not just about you and your function anymore. And that is something I usually advise to people in all functions, not just in the HR side. If you're in marketing and you love marketing, if you want to grow into a CMO role, understand that the weight of marketing will change towards managing people, managing budgets, managing administrative things. You need to be comfortable with that. You need to enjoy that. Otherwise, you're just going to suffer as a leader.
Wow, I think that's great advice because a lot of people might think of a C-suite person as somebody, in a suit, living a glamorous lifestyle. But in reality, when I talk to a lot of these people, it's, quite the opposite. The responsibilities are so much that it really isn't the right thing for everybody.
No.
So, moving on into a little bit about Group M. So, what would you say it's like working for Group M, and why people should join Group M aside from, obviously the monetary rewards or perks?
Yeah, sure. GroupM is a very large company, part of an even bigger company, which is WPP. So if you're thinking about, advertising and media advertising, as a field that you want to explore or you are already exploring, I think GroupM is probably the biggest talent machine you can find. It's where you will find more opportunities, to go across agencies, across countries, working with the biggest brands in the world, not just as clients, but also as vendors or partners in things like tech. The digital media companies of this world. So I think it's for people that are really passionate about advertising, about media, about digital. They're working with tight deadlines, understanding that you have customers that are at the center of what you do. If you're working on the business side, if you're working in other areas that support that business, you need to understand what the business is about. It's a sophisticated business. You need to understand how the company makes money, how is it organized, a very complex matrix with a lot of stakeholders, a lot of brands. I think it's a huge challenge from a corporate standpoint, because there's so many things to look into. But at the same time, it's for the kind of people that are looking that kind of challenge, that they thrive in this fantastic, huge world where you have so many paths that you can decide. So you need to just explore. Very different to a more small entrepreneurial environment, which there are great things too, but it's a different experience, right?
So just lastly, in terms of your work for Group M and how you find meaning in your work, how do you contribute to society in a meaningful way, would you say?
Of course. So the company globally has very clear commitments and actions towards social responsibility, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of course, those things fall directly in my hands as a chief people officer. So we do have an agenda that is structured around these things. What are we going to do each year around these things? How can we build on what we did on the year before? In all the different areas of social responsibility, such as offering jobs to people in underdeveloped areas of countries where they may not have a chance to access a job like the ones we offer unless you reach out. Things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we make sure that we have very fair ways of working, that people feel included, represented, they feel heard. We do surveys every year to listen to our people. We look into results. We do focus groups with them to see what areas we can improve, and we try to commit to those things year after year. Right now, we're actually doing our 2023, we're ending our 2023 survey, where we're planning to look into the results. Participation has been great, which is the first thing, that you can see when people participate is because they believe in it. They want to be heard. And then the responsibility is on us leaders to make sure we deliver. So I think as a company, in an industry that is not very typical around these things, GroupM has and WPP, they have a very clear commitment, and that's usually reflected in those surveys. People feel this as a very strong point.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Federico. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I wish you all the best.
Of course. Thanks, Adrian. And it's been my pleasure.